U.S.-backed forces driving out militants from their stronghold in that self-proclaimed capital of their supposed caliphate in Raqqa, of course. That happened this month, and it was a huge victory for the U.S. and our allied forces. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad must be the next to go. You know, we've heard that before. The Syrian dictator, though, seems to have only been strengthened, even as his regime is accused of using chemical weapons against his own people. The UN saying the regime carried out that chemical attack that killed 90 people in April. But at the meeting in Geneva, Tillerson says, quote, "The reign of the Assad family is coming to an end. The only issue is how that should be brought about." Will it? Joining us now is Bassam Rifai, a member of the nonprofit Syrian American Council, who has been fighting for his people. Bassam, good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Eric.
We've heard this before, the call for Bashar al-Assad to go. Is that realistic?
We have heard this before, and it absolutely is realistic. There is no future where Syrians can live freely in Syria with Bashar al-Assad. Syrian refugees that are outside of the country want to return to their homes, and they can't while Assad is there in power.
But it seems that Assad has only been strengthened by the military victories. It's only been strengthened by Moscow and Putin's support and by Tehran.
Yeah, that's of course. Iran has been a huge force for Assad, and in fact, Iran is part of the problem right now with Raqqa. If we leave Raqqa alone right now, Iran could essentially become a very pro-Iran area, and that's something we don't want to see happen. Even though we have pushed out ISIS, the fight against ISIS right now is not over. We still need to be pushing forward.
What are you concerned about there?
Well, I'm concerned about Iran having a land bridge that goes from Lebanon all the way to Tehran. Right now, that's what they're actually building. They are right now literally at the moment in two fights on the west, and they're attacking one city on the west and one other city on the eastern side, which would connect their bridge. The SDF is trying to push against this right now, but they don't have the resources that they need. And frankly, if they had a little bit of unity, there is an FSA brigade that is on the border of Jordan right now.
FSA is Free Syrian Army.
That's right, and this FSA brigade was actually a Pentagon-trained brigade that is ready and willing, and they have fought against Iranian troops before and have won against them, that are ready to join in on that fight.
But how is it even possible when they're facing on one level Assad, you know, and the other level you're facing the Iranian-backed militias and their troops?
Let's not forget about Russia from the air, too. I mean, frankly, it's, that's Assad's military. He has Iran from the air as his air force, and he has Iran on the ground as his army. So
as long as he's being backed, I mean, there is no way I think that he could leave in this case, because he's getting backed on all sides. Well, some think that maybe the U.S. will finally accede to that, despite these calls for him to leave.
Well, we need to show a strong use of force, and we need to show there's been some chatter within Congress, and even some people from the administration that I've heard have said, hey, let's ink a deal with Russia to try and get Iran out of Syria. Well, that's not going to be something that's possible. Even General McMaster has said that is not. That's impossible to happen. Those ties with Russia and Iran and Syria are just way too strong.
And when you say use of force, do you mean American troops or allied troops, or what do you mean?
I think both of them. I mean, our first step, honestly, should be bombing the Iranian militias. It should be bombing the Iranian militias, and to show how serious we are about defeating ISIS, about how serious we are about pushing Iran's influence out of the Middle East. I heard just last week the Iranian ambassador said, this is our region. America should stop meddling in it. This is not your region. This is Syrian land. This is for the Syrians. Why are you occupying Syrian land?
Are you concerned, though, if America, targets Iranian troops? I mean, man, that could start a wider war.
Well, honestly, these are not Iranian troops. These are Iranian militias, and so that's another thing. Is in fact we don't have sanctions on the Iranian militias. We've put sanctions on Hezbollah, but we need to also put sanctions on these Iranian militias. And it's amazing that we haven't. I know Representative Adam Kinzinger has said that that's something that he wants to see happen, and Representative Kinzinger also brought up in a subcommittee just this past week about Eastern Ghouta. There's been a huge siege that the Assad regime has been raining down on that
He's
city.
been using, starvation as a weapon of war, according to the reports. Babies starved to death, people starved to death, the civilians besieged.
Yeah, it's terrible. I know Representative Kinzinger had even tweeted out photos about those babies. And again, it goes back to Iran. On March 24th, Iran had shut down. There was a push for a route out of Eastern Ghouta, but Iran actually is the one who stepped in and shut that down. They are just as responsible for this siege as Assad is.
The humanitarian aspect of the catastrophe is unbelievable. And then you, as we know, and then you add on top of that what happened at the UN this week. The United Nations had the investigation into the chemical attack. They said that the Syrian government, Assad al-Bashar's regime, did it. And guess what Russia did? They raised their hand and vetoed the resolution for more investigations. Let me show you what the British ambassador to the United Nations, Matthew Raycroft, said about that.
In 2013, President Putin committed to ensuring Syria dismantled its chemical weapons program. We are gravely disappointed that in spite of this, Russia continues to block action on chemical weapons use in Syria through its vetoes and its obfuscation.
There he's blaming Russia, blaming Vladimir Putin right there.
Vladimir Putin is responsible, frankly. The Russians have time and time again come ahead and backed Assad and said, hey, look, any sort of UN resolution, anything that puts any blame on Assad for using chemical weapons, they're going to veto. They're going to sit there and they're going to say, hey, this didn't happen. They're trying to erase history is what they're trying to do.
This really makes a mockery of the international order when this happens. And finally, I mean, how do you think this will all play out? Those who don't see Assad leaving immediately, not enough pressure, and your people, the country, Syria, has suffered so much, and it has just been an unbelievable catastrophe.
I mean, Syria used to be a beautiful country. It is becoming war-torn, and the people of Syria, they want to see an end to this war.
You think there will be a day when Assad will be gone?
Absolutely. I am very positive about that. I understand that Assad is in the moment trying to push strongly to have Iran come in and back him and really push out any sort of Syrian opposition. I can tell you, just this past weekend, there was the Syrian American Forum in Washington, D.C., and we saw a revitalized energy coming out of the Syrian opposition. The top leaders, people who are ready to take hold of Syria. There's financial backing to rebuild Syria. We have all the resources. We have the manpower. We have the people ready to rebuild Syria as a free, democratic, pluralistic society, and that's what Syrians want to see.
And the peace talks will be resuming again in Geneva, and for many of those who support your cause, that is certainly the hope. Bassam Rifai of the Syrian American Council, thank you for coming in this afternoon.
Thank you, Eric.
Of course.